Book 10. The gates of heaven unfold. Jove summons all the gods to council in the common hall. Sublimely seated he surveys from fore the fields, the camps, the fortune of the war, and all the inferior world. From first to last, the sovereign senate in degrees are placed. Then thus the Almighty Sire began: Ye gods, natives or denizens of blessed abodes, from whence these murmurs and this change of mind, this backward fate from what was first designed? Why this protracted war, when my commands pronounced a peace and gave the Latian lands? What fear or hope on either port divides? Or heavens and arms or powers on different sides? A lawful time of war at length will come, nor need your haste anticipate the doom. When Carthage shall contend the world with Rome, shall force the rigid rocks and alpine chains, and like a flood come pouring on the plains. Then is your time for faction and debate, for partial favor and permitted hate. Let now your immature dissension cease. Sit quiet and compose your souls to peace. Thus Jupiter in view unfolds the charge, but lovely Venus thus replies at large: O power immense, eternal energy, for to what else protection can we fly? Seest thou the proud Rutulians, how they dare in fields unpunished and insult my care? How lofty Turnus vaunts amidst his train, in shining arms triumphant on the plain. Even in their lines and trenches they contend, and scarce their walls the Trojan troops defend. The town is filled with slaughter and overflows with a red deluge their increasing motes. Æneid, ignorant and far from thence, has left their camp exposed without defense. This endless outrage shall they still sustain? Shall Troy renewed be forced and fired again? A second siege my banished issue fears, and a new Diomed in arms appears. One more audacious mortal will be found, and I, thy daughter, wait another wound. Yet, if with fates averse without thy leave, the Latian lands my progeny receive, bear they the pains of violated law, and thy protection from their aid withdraw. But if the gods their sure success foretell, if those of heaven consent with those of hell, to promise Italy who dare debate the power of Jove or fix another fate. What should I tell of tempest on the main, of Aeolus usurping Neptune's reign, of Iris sent with bacchanalian heat to inspire the matrons and destroy the fleet? Now Juno to the Stygian sky descends, solicits hell for aid and armed the fiends. That new example warned yet above, an act that well became the wife of Jove. Alecto, raised by her with rage and flames, the peaceful bosoms of the Latian dames. Imperial sway no more exalts my mind. Such hopes I had indeed while heaven was kind. Now let my happier foes possess my place, whom Jove prefers before the Trojan race. And conquer they whom you with conquest grace. Since you can spare from all your wide command no spot of earth, no hospitable land, which may my wandering fugitives receive, since haughty Juno will not give you leave. Then, Father, if I still may use that name, by ruined Troy, yet smoking from the flame, I beg you, let Ascanius, by my care, be freed from danger and dismiss the war. Inglorious let him live without a crown, the father may be cast on coasts unknown, struggling with fate, but let me save the son. Mine is Cythera, mine the Cyprian towers, in those recesses and those sacred bowers. Obscurely let him rest, his right resign to promised empire and his Julian line. Then Carthage may the Ausonian towns destroy, nor fear the race of a rejected boy. What profits if my son to escape the fire, armed with his gods and loaded with his sire, to pass the perils of the seas and wind, evade the Greeks and leave the war behind, to reach the Italian shores, if after all our second Pergamus is doomed to fall. Much better had he curbed his high desires, and hovered o'er his ill-extinguished fires. To Simius' banks the fugitives restore, and give them back to war and all the wars before. Deep indignation swelled Saturnia's heart. And must I own, she said, my secret smart? What with more decence when silent kept, and but for this unjust reproach had slept? Did God or man your favorite son advise, with war unharmed the legions to surprise? By fate you boast, and by the gods' decree, he left his native land for Italy. Confess the truth, By mad Cassandra, more than heaven inspired, he saw a foreign shore. Did I persuade to trust his second Troy to the raw conduct of a beardless boy, with walls unfinished, which himself forsakes, and through the waves of wandering voyage takes? When have I urged him meanly to demand the Tuscan aid and arm a quiet land? Did I or Iris give this mad advice, or made the fool himself the fatal choice? You think it hard the Latians should destroy with sword your Trojans and with fires your Troy. Hard and unjust indeed for men to draw their native air, nor take a foreign law, that Turnus is permitted still to live, to whom his birth a god and goddess give, but yet is just and lawful for your line to drive their fields and force with fraud to join. Realms not your own among your claims divide, and from the bridegroom tear the promised bride. Petition, while you public arms prepare, pretend at peace and yet provoke a war. 'Twas given to you, your darling son to shroud, to draw the dastard from the fighting crowd, and for a man obtained an empty cloud. From flaming fleets you turned the fire away, and changed the ships to daughters of the sea. But is my crime the Queen of Heaven offense, if she presume to save her suffering friends? Your son, not knowing what his foes decree, you say, is absent. Absent let him be. Yours is Cythera, yours the Cyprian towers, the soft recesses and the sacred bowers. Why do you then these needless arms prepare, and thus provoke a people prone to war? Did I with fire the Trojan town deface, or hinder from return your exiled race? Was I the cause of mischief, or the man whose lawless lust the fatal war began? Think on whose fate the adulterous youth replied, who promised, who procured the sporting bride. When all the United States of Greece combined to purge the world of the perfidious kind, then was your time to fear the Trojan fate. Your quarrels and complaints are now too late. Thus, Juno, murmurs rise with mixed applause, just as they favor or dislike the cause. So winds, when yet unfledged in woods they lie, in whispers first their tender voices try, then issue on the main with bellowing rage, and storms to trembling mariners presage. Then thus to both reply the imperial god, who shakes heaven's act axles with his awful nod. When he begins, the silent Senate stand, with reverence, listening to the dread command. The clouds dispel, the winds their breath restrain, and the hushed waves lie flatted on the main. Celestials, your attentive ears incline, since, said the god, the Trojans must not join in wished alliance with the Latian line, since endless jarrings and immortal hate tend but to discompose our happy state. The war henceforward be resigned to fate, each to his proper fortune stand or fall. Equal and unconcerned I look on all. Rutulians, Trojans are the same to me, and both shall draw the lots their fates decree. Let these assaults, if fortune be their friend, and if she favors those, let those defend. The fates will find their way, the thunderous said, and shook the sacred honors of his head, attesting sticks the inviolable flood, and the black regions of his brother God. Trembled the poles of heaven, and earth confessed the nod. This end the sessions had the Senate rise, and to his palace wait their sovereign through the skies. Meantime, intent upon their siege, the foes, within their walls the Trojan host enclose. They wound, they kill, they watch at every gate, renew the fires and urge their happy fate. The Aeneans wish in vain their wanted chief, hopeless of fight, more hopeless of relief. Thin on the towers they stand, and even those few, a feeble, fainting, and dejected crew. Yet in the face of danger some there stood, the two bold brothers of Sarpedon's blood, Aetius and Acmon, both the Acerasi, young Haemon, and though young resolved to die. With these were Chlorus and Thymoetes joined, Tibris and Castor, both of Lycian kind. From Acmon's hands a rolling stone there came, so large it half deserved a mountain's name. Strong sinews was the youth and big of bone, his brother Menestheus could not more have done, or the great father of the intrepid son. Some firebrands throw, some flights of arrows sent, and some with darts and some with stones defend. Amid the press appears the beauteous boy, the care of Venus and the hope of Troy. His lovely face unadorned, his head was bare, in ringlets over his shoulders hung his hair. His forehead circled with a diadem, distinguished from the crowd he shines a gem, enchased in gold or polished ivory set, amidst the meaner foil of sable jet. nor Ismarus was warning to the war, directed pointed arrows from afar, and that with bosom armed in Lydia born, where plenteous harvests the fat fields adorn, where proud Pactolus floats the fruitful lands, and leaves a rich manure of golden sands. There Capus, author of the Capuan name, and there was Menestus too, increased in fame, since Turnus from the camp he cast with shame. Thus more was waged on either side. Meantime the hero cuts the nightly tide, for, anxious from Eventer when he went, he sought the Tyrrhene camp and Torquen's tent, exposed the cause of coming to the chief, his name and country told, and asked relief. Proposed the terms, his own small strength declared, what vengeance proud Messentius had prepared, what Turnus, bold and violent, designed. Then shewed the slippery state of humankind, and fickle fortune warned him to beware, and to his wholesome counsel added prayer. Torquen without delay the treaty signs, and to the Trojan troops the Tuscan joins. They soon set sail, nor now the fates withstand their forces trusted with a foreign hand. Aeneas leads upon his stern appear 2 lions carved, which rising Ida bear. Ida, to wandering Trojans ever dear. Under their grateful shade Aeneas sate, revolving war's events and various fate. His left young Pallas kept fixed to his side, and oft of winds enquired, and of the tide, oft of the spores and of the watery way, and what he suffered both by land and sea. Now, sacred sisters, open all your spring, the Tuscan leaders and their army sing, which followed great Aeneas to the war. Their arms, their numbers, and their names declare. 1,000 youths brave Massicus obey, born in the tiger through the foaming sea, from Asian brought and Cosa by his care. For arms light quivers, bows and shafts they bear. Fierce Abas next his men bright armor wore, his stern Apollo's golden statue bore. 600 Populonias sent along, all skilled in martial exercise and strong. 300 more for battle Ilva joins, an isle renowned for steel and unexhausted mines. Aeschylus on his prow the third appears, who heaven interprets and the wandering stars. From offered entrails prodigies expounds, and peals of thunder with presaging sound. 1,000 spears in warlike order stand, sent by the peasants under his command. Fair Astur follows in the watery field, proud of his managed horse and painted shield. Graviska noisome from the neighboring fen, and his own Sere sent 300 men. With those which Minos' field and Pyrgi gave, all bred in arms, unanimous and brave. Thou, Muse, the name of Sinurus renew, and brave Cupevo followed but by few, whose helm confessed the lineage of the man, and bore with wings displayed a silver swan. Love was the fault of his famed ancestry, whose forms and fortunes in his ensigns fly. For Cygnus loved unhappy Phaeton, and sung his loss in poplar groves alone, beneath the sister shades to soothe his grief. Heaven heard his song, and hastened his relief, and changed to snowy plumes his hoary hair, and winged his flight to chant aloft in air. His son Cupevo brushed the briny flood, upon his stern a brawny centaur stood, who heaved the rock and threatening still to throw, with lifted hands alarmed the seas below. They seemed to fear the formidable sight, and rolled their billows on to speed his flight. Ocnus was next, who led his native train of hardy warriors through the watery plain. The son of Mento by the Tuscan stream, from whence the Mantuan town derives the name, an ancient city but of mixed descent. 3 several tribes compose the government. 4 towns are on the reach, but all obey the Mantuan laws and own the Tuscan sway. Hate to Mezentius armed 500 more, who Mencius from his sire Benacus bore. Mencius with rats of reeds his forehead covered o'er. These grave Auletes leads 100 sweep, with stretching oars at once the glassy deep. Him and his martial train the Triton bears, high on his poop the sea-green god appears. Frowning he seems his crooked shell to sound, and at the blast the billows dance around. A hairy man above the waist he shows, a porpoise tail beneath his belly grows, and ends a fish. His breasts the waves divides, and froth and foam augment the murmuring tides. Full 30 ships transport the chosen train, for Troy's relief and scour the briny main. Now was the world forsaken by the sun, and Phoebe half her nightly race had run. The careful chief who never closed his eyes, himself the rudder holds, the sails supplies. A choir of Nereids meet him on the flood, once his own galley hewn from Ida's wood. But now as many nymphs the sea they sweep, as rode before tall vessels on the deep. They know him from afar and in a ring enclosed the ship that bore the Trojan king. Sumodosi, whose voice excelled the rest, above the waves advanced her snowy breast. Her right hand stops the stern, her left divides the curling ocean and corrects the tides. She spoke for all the choir, and thus began with pleasing words to warn the unknowing man. Sleeps our loved Lord, O goddess born, awake. Spread every sail, pursue your watery track, and haste your course. Your navy once were we, from Æneid's height descending to the sea, till Turnus, as at anchor fixed we stood, presumed to violate our holy wood. Then, loosed from shore, we fled his fires profane. Unwillingly we broke our master's chain, and since have sought you through the Tuscan main. The mighty mother changed our forms to these, and gave us life immortal in the seas. But young as Æneid, in his camp distressed by your insulting foes, is horribly pressed. The Arcadian horsemen in the Trojan host advance in order on the Latian coast. To cut their way the Daunian chief designs, before their troops can reach the Trojan lines. Thou, when the rosy morn restores the light, first arm the soldiers for the ensuing fight. Thyself the fated sword of Vulcan wield, and bear aloft the impenetrable shield. Tomorrow's sun, unless my skill be vain, shall see huge heaps of foes in battle slain. Porting, she spoke, and with immortal force pushed on the vessels in her watery course. For well she knew the way, impelled behind, the ship flew forward and outstripped the wind. The rest make up, unknowing of the course. The chiefs admires their speed and happy omens draws. Then thus he prayed, and fixed on heaven his eyes. Hear, thou great mother of the deities, with turrets crowned, on Ida's holy hill, fierce tigers reined and curbed obey thy will. Firm thy own omens lead us on to fight, and let the Phrygians conquer in thy right. He said no more, and now renewing day had chased the shadows of the night away. He charged the soldiers with preventing care, their flags to hollow and their arms prepare. Warned of the ensuing fight, and bade them hope the war. Now his lofty poop he viewed below, his camp encompassed and the enclosing foe. His blazing shield embraced he held on high. The camp received the sign and with loud shouts replied. Hope arms their courage, from their towers they throw their thoughts with double force and drive the foe. Thus, at the signal given, the cranes arise before the stormy south and blacken all the skies. King Turnus wondered at the fight renewed, till, looking back, the Trojan fleet he viewed. The seas with swelling canvas covered o'er, and the swift ships descending on the shore. The Latian saw from far with dazzled eyes the radiant crest that seemed in flames to rise, and dark diffusive fires round the field, and the keen glittering the golden shield. Thus threatening comets, when by night they rise, shoot sanguine streams and sadden all the skies. So serious, flashing forth sinister lights, pale humankind with plagues and with dry famine fright. Yet Turnus with undaunted mind is bent to man the shores and hinder their descent, and thus awakes the courage of his friends. What you so long have wished, kind fortune sends, in ardent arms to meet the invading foe. You find, and find him at advantage now. Yours is the day you need, but only there. Your swords will make you masters of the war. Your sires, your sons, your houses, and your lands, and dearest wives are all within your hands. Be mindful of the race from whence they came, and emulate in arms your father's fame. Now take the time, while staggering yet they stand, with feet unfirm and prepossess the strand. Fortune befriends the bold. No more, he said, but balanced whom to leave and whom to lead. Then these elects the landing to prevent, and those he leaves to keep the city pent. Meantime the Trojan sends his troops ashore. Some are by boats exposed, by bridges moored. With laboring oars they bear aloft the strand, where the tide languishes and leap and land. Tarchon observes the coast with careful eyes, and where no fort he finds, no water fries, nor billows with unequal murmurs roar, but smoothly slide along and swell the shore. That course he steered, and thus he gave command. Here ply your oars, and at all hazard land. Force on the vessel that her keel may wound this hated soil and furrow hostile ground. Let me securely land, I ask no more. Then sink my ships or shatter on the shore. This fiery speech inflames his fearful friends. They tug at every oar and every stretcher bends. They run their ships aground, the vessels knock, thus forced ashore, and tremble with the shock. Tarchon's alone was lost, that stranded stood. struck on a bank and beaten by the flood. She breaks her back, the loosened sides give way, and plunge the Tuscan soldiers in the sea. Their broken oars and floating planks withstand their passage while they labor to the land, and ebbing tides bear back upon the uncertain sand. Now Turnus leads his troops without delay, advancing to the margin of the sea. The trumpets sound, Aeneas first assailed. The clowns new raised and roar, and soon prevailed. Great Theron fell, an omen of the fight. Great Theron, lord of limbs of giant height. He first in open field defied the prince, but armor scaled with gold was no defense against the fated sword, which opened wide his plated shield and pierced his naked side. Next, Lycus fell, who, not like others born, was from his wretched mother ripped and torn. Sacred, O Phoebus, from his birth to thee, for his beginning life from bidding steel was free. Not far from him was Gyas led along, of monstrous bulk, with Cisseus fierce and strong. Vain bulk and strength, for when the chief assailed, nor valor nor Herculean arms availed, nor their famed father warned in war to go with great Alcides while he toiled below. The noisy Pharos next received his death. Aeneas writhed his thought and stopped his boiling breath. Then wretched Sidon had received his doom, who courted Clytius in his beardless bloom, and sought with lust obscene polluted joys. The Trojan sword had cured his love of boys. Had not his 7 bold brethren stopped the course of the fierce champions with united force? 7 darts were thrown at once, and some rebound from his bright shield, some on his helmet sound. The rest had reached him, but his mother's care prevented those and turned aside in air. The prince then called Achates to supply the spears that knew the way to victory. Those fatal weapons which inure to blood, in Grecian bodies under Ilium stood. Not one of those my hand shall toss in vain against your foes on this contented plain, he said. Then seized a mighty spear and threw, which, winged with fate through Macon's buckler flew, pierced all the brazen plates and reached his heart. He staggered with intolerable smart. Elcanus saw and reached, but reached in vain, his helping hand his brother to sustain. A second spear which kept the former course, from the same hand then sent with equal force, his right arm pierced and holding on bereft, his use of both and pinioned down his left. Then Numitor from his dead brother drew the ill-omened spear and at the Trojan threw. Preventing fate directs the lance away, which glancing only marked Achates' thigh. In pride of youth, the Sabine Clausus came, and from afar Atriops took his aim. The spear flew hissing through the middle space, and pierced his throat directed at his face. It stopped at once the passage of his wind, and the free soul to flitting air resigned. His forehead was the first that struck the ground. Lifeblood and life rushed mingling to the wound. He slew 3 brothers of the Borean race, and 3 whom Ismarus, their native place, had sent to war, but all the sons of Vergil. Halesus next, the bold Orynci leads. The son of Neptune to his aid succeeds, conspicuous on his horse. On either hand, these fight to keep and those to win the land. With mutual blood the Ausonian soil is dyed, while on its borders each their claim decide. As wintry winds contending in the sky, with equal force of lungs their titles try. They rage, they roar, the doubtful wrack of heaven stands without motion and the tide undriven. Each bent to conquer, neither side to yield. They long suspend the fortune of the field. Both armies thus perform what courage can, foot set to foot, and mingled man to man. But in another port the Arcadian horse, with ill success, engaged the Latin force. For where the impetuous torrent rushing down, huge craggy stones and rooted trees had thrown, they left their coursers and, unused to fight, on foot were scattered in a shameful flight. Pallas, who with disdain and grief had viewed his foes pursuing and his friends pursued, used threatenings mixed with prayers, his last resource, with these to move their minds, with those to fire their force. Which way, companions, whither would you run? By you yourselves and mighty battles won. By my great sire, by his established name, and early promise of my future fame. By my youth, emulous of equal right, to share his honors, shun ignoble fight. Trust not your feet, your hands must hew aim through yon black body and that thick array. 'Tis through that forward path that we must come. There lies our way, and that our passage home. Nor powers alone, nor destinies below, oppress or arms, with equal strength we go. With mortal hands to meet a mortal foe. See on what foot we stand, a scanty shore, the sea behind, our enemies before. No passage left unless we swim the main, or, forcing these, the Trojan trenches gain. This said, he strode with eager haste along, and bore amidst the thickest of the throng. Lagus the first he met, with fate to foe, had heaved a stone of mighty weight to throw. Stooping, The spear descended on his chin, just where the bone distinguished either loin. It stuck so fast, so deeply buried lay, that scarce the victor forced the steel away. Hesper came on, but while he moved too slow, to wished revenge the prince prevents his blow. For, warding his at once he pressed, and plunged the fatal weapon in his breast. Then lewd Anchemulus he laid in dust, who stained his stepdame's bed with impious lust. And after him the Dacian twins were slain, Laris and Turnus on the Latian plain, so wondrous, like in feature, shape, and size, as caused an error in their parents' eyes. Grateful mistake, but soon the sword decides the nice distinction, and their fate divides. For Turnus' head was lopped, and Laris' hand, dismembered, saw its owner on the strand. The trembling fingers yet the fork constrain, and threatened still the intended stroke in vain. Now, to renew the charge, the Arcadians came. Sight of such acts and sense of honest shame, and grief with anger mixed, their minds inflame. Then with a casual blow was Rhetus slain, who chanced, as Pallas threw, to cross the plain. The flying spear was after Ilus sent, but Rhetus happened on a death unmeant. From Turnus and from Tyres while he fled, the lance athwart his body laid him dead. Rolled from his chariot with a mortal wound, and intercepted fate he spurned the ground. As when, in summer, welcome winds arise, the watchful shepherd to the forest flies, and fires the midmost plants, contagion spreads, and, catching flames, infects the neighboring heads. Around the forest flies the furious blast, and all the leafy nation sinks at last. And Vulcan rides in triumph over the waste. The pastor, pleased with his dire victory, beholds the satiate flames in sheets ascend the sky. So Pallas' troops their scattered strength unite, and pouring on their foes, their prince delights. Halesus came, fierce with desire of blood, but first collected in his arms he stood. Advancing then, he plied the spear so well, Ladon, Demodocus, and Pheres fell. Around the head he tossed his glittering brand, and from Strymonius hewed his better hand, held up to guard his throat, then hurled a stone at Thoas' ample front and pierced the bone. It struck beneath the space of either eye, and blood and mingled brains together fly. Deep skilled in future fates, Halesus' sire did with the youth to lonely groves retire. But when the father's mortal race was run, dire destiny laid hold upon the son, and hauled him to the wall to find beneath the Evandrian spear a memorable death. Pallas the encounter seeks, but ere he throws to Tuscan Tiber thus address his woes. O sacred stream, direct my flying dart, and give to pass the proud Helesus' horde. His arms and spoils thy holy oak shall bear. Pleased with the bribe, the god received his prayer. For, while his shield protects a friend distressed, the dart came driving on and pierced his breast. But Lausus, no small portion of the war, permits not panic fear to reign too far. Caused by the death of so renowned a knight, but by his own example cheers the fight. Fierce Abas first he slew, Abas, the stay of Trojan hopes and hindrance of the day. The Phrygian troops escaped the Greeks in pain, they and their mixed allies now load the plain. To the rude shock of war both armies came, their leaders equal and their strength the same. The rear so pressed the front they could not wield their angry weapons to dispute the field. Here Pallas urges on, and Lausus there. Of equal youth and beauty both appear, but both by fate forbid to breathe their native air. Their conquest in the field great Jove withstands, but doomed to fall, but fall by greater hands. Meantime, Turnus warns the Daunian chief of Lausus' danger, urging swift relief. With his driven chariot he divides the crowd, and, making to his friends thus calls aloud, let none presume his needless aid to join. Retire and clear the field, the fight is mine. To this right hand is Pallas only due. Oh, were his father here, my just revenge to view. From the forbidden space his men retired, Pallas their awe and his stern words admired. Surveyed him o'er and o'er with wondering sight, struck with his haughty mien and towering height. Then to the king, your empty wants forbear. Success I hope, and fate I cannot fear. Alive or dead I shall deserve a name. Jove is impartial, and to both the same. He said, and to the void advanced his pace. Pale horror sate on each Arcadian face. Then Turnus from his chariot leaping light, addressed himself on foot to single fight. And as a lion when he spies from far a bull that seems to meditate the war, bending his neck and spurning back the sand, runs roaring downward from his hilly stand. Imagine eager Turnus not more slow to rush from high on his unequal foe. Young Pallas, when he saw the chief advance, within due distance of his flying lance, prepares to charge him, first resolved to try if fortune with his want of force supply. And thus the heaven and Hercules addressed, Alcides, once on earth Evandrus guest, his son adjures you by those holy rites that hospitable board those genial nights. Assist my great attempt to gain the prize, and let proud Turnus view with dying eyes his ravished spoils. 'Twas heard the vain request. Alcides mourned and stifled sighs within his breast. Then Jove, to soothe his sorrow, thus began. Short bounds of life are set to mortal man. 'Tis virtue's work alone to stretch the narrow span. So many sons of gods in bloody fight around the walls of Troy have lost the light. My own Sarpedon fell beneath his foe, nor I, his mighty sire, could ward the blow. Even Turnus shortly shall resign his breath, and stands already on the verge of death. This said, the god permits the fatal fight, but from the Lycian fields averts his sight. Now with full force his spear young Pallas threw, and having thrown his shining falchion drew. The steel just grazed along the shoulder joint, and marked it slightly with a glancing point. Fierce Turnus first to nearer distance drew, and poised his pointed spear before he threw. Then, as the winged weapon whizzed along, "See now," said he, "whose arm is better strung." The spear kept on the fatal course, unstayed by plates of iron which over the shield were laid. Through folded brass and tough bull hides it passed, his corslet pierced and reached his heart at last. In vain the youth tugs at the broken wood. The soul comes issuing with the vital blood. He falls, his arms upon his body sound, and with his bloody teeth he bites the ground.